Last night, speaking at Turning Point USA's AmericaFest, Kari Lake had some choice words for Maricopa County election officials, calling for them to be locked up. Now, this is really fascinating. Kari Lake's battle right now over what happened with the election in Arizona, I believe, is one of the most important battles in this country because the midterm is not yet over. The midterm election, although it happened over a month ago, we have the certification in the election in which Kari Lake was running for the governorship, but there is an election-related lawsuit still underway with questions that need to be answered. Now, while the shocking story may be that Kari Lake has called for imprisoning Maricopa County election officials, the one thing that I find very fascinating here is a story from AZ Family. Judge takes motion to dismiss lawsuit filed by Kari Lake under advisement. Interesting story filed just a moment ago, and I'm reading this, and they don't really lay out the position of the Kari Lake campaign, in which there are many very important questions, and I don't know what to say. Now, I can tell you, they've certified the election for Hobbs, for the Democrat, and so it's supposed to be a done deal. However, Arizona law does allow for an election contest. So this is where it gets really interesting because YouTube has their weird rules about how you can't question certified elections. So I don't know to tell you, YouTube, there is an election contest under the law underway. I am not here to tell anybody definitively one way or another what happened or anything like that. But I will point out the arguments being made by Kari Lake's team. And I think some of the arguments have merit. I mean, first and foremost, the ballot tabulator errors. This is confirmed fact-based news. It's not speculation. It happened. Now, what they're saying officially, anyone who tried to vote and the machine kicked it back was still able to vote. I say fantastic. I'm glad to hear it. Now, we should probably get a random sampling of those ballots that were kicked back and test to make sure that they were accurately counted, right? There's a viral video of a man, and he says, if you went to the bank to count your life savings and they said, sorry, the counter's not working, just put it in box number 3 and then we'll let you know later how much money you've actually got. You'd say, no way. And he asks, now what's more important, your vote or your money? Excellent point. Just ask Mark Zuckerberg, among other individuals who spent large sums of money to have an impact on this election. Kari Lake is asking questions about that. Asking questions about 25,000 ballots they say came in after the deadline and about there being no chain of custody on some universal mail-in ballots. Again, I am not ascribing any veracity to those arguments. I'm simply pointing out those are the arguments. Now, why is it that AZ Family writes about this story? Hey, I'll give them that much. But they're not breaking down the actual position from the Kari Lake team. Could be wrong. Could be totally wrong. I don't know. I want to see what the judge has to say. I want to see the court actually go through the evidence and make a definitive statement. The challenge, I suppose, is will these judges be partisan? I really don't know. And if they are, then so be it. And maybe we'll never really know. But there are some really shocking questions if what Kari Lake's team alleges are true, turn out to be true. That there's no chain of custody for ballots. That 17,000 people had issues with ballot tabulators. And they said, no, we got all those votes in. I hear you saying that. But for me as an individual, as a layman, you're telling me to either trust Kari Lake or trust Katie Hobbs. Why is it that YouTube tells me we are forced to just trust Katie Hobbs? No, sorry, I'm not playing that game. I'm not going to trust one or the other. I'm a fan of Kari Lake, but she's got to prove it. And I want to see a third party go through this. She says she'll take it to the Supreme Court. I'd like to see it. But the fact remains, if Hobbs comes out and says, no, I certified it personally, everything's fine, I say, that's great, but we've not gone through any of the documentation. If Kari Lake says, here's some issues with chain of custody, I say, that's great, we need to go through the documentation. In this world of censorship, with everything we're learning from Elon Musk and the Twitter files and new revelations coming out, I'm being told by big tech that I have to choose only one side. Get out of here. If a corrupt individual, and I'm saying this hypothetically, certifies their own election, we're supposed to just agree that it happened? No. We go to the courts if there's a challenge, and I want the courts to tell me. Okay? I don't know. Look, I really do think, in all likelihood, Kari Lake's not going to win this one. And I'm not trying to be mean. I just saw Kari Lake the other day. We chatted for a couple minutes. I said, great speech. Good luck. I'm a fan. I hope I hope she finds great success. And if she is right, I hope she's proven right. But I don't know. I've not seen what they've seen. I've only heard the arguments. I now defer to the judge. And I hope the judge is principled and does the right thing. But let me read through some of what happened in court today, so you can get an understanding of the arguments made by Kari Lake's team and the arguments made by Katie Hobbs' team. I think the corporate press has Katie Hobbs' team, their argument, fairly simply put. And then we have a Twitter thread from Tracy Beans breaking down basically the whole thing, which it does give Katie Hobbs her fair shake to a certain degree, and Kari Lake's as well. So let's read this. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member in order to support our work directly. Click that Join Us button, and you will be supporting our work directly, our journalists, our writers, and our endeavors here. You may have realized I'm in a different building. The audio is probably really bad. We tried our best. I am here in Arizona for Turning Point's USA's AmFest. This is the last week of the year. We're taking the last week off. So this week, we're here until Thursday. But tonight, special event. You don't want to miss it. I believe it's going to be 7:30 p.m. Eastern time at Timcast IRL, youtube.com/Timcast IRL. We will be live streaming the show on stage with James Lindsay, Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, and I believe we may have another guest. It's a little bit up in the air, excuse me, but Harmeet Dillon may be joining in the later half of the show as well. So I'm very much excited for this. I suppose guests subject to change. I normally don't like to announce guests, but that may be the case. So with your support, we're able to pull off things like this. So I really do appreciate it. And of course, being here in Arizona, we get to see it all firsthand. At this event last night, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. We heard Kari Lake call for imprisoning Maricopa County election officials. Speaking to a crowd of young conservatives at Turning Point USA's AmericaFest, Lake discussed her election contest at length, repeating unproven allegations about both the 2020 presidential election and Governor-elect Katie Hobbs' victory last month, saying, "These people are crooks. They need to be locked up." Lake said of Maricopa County election officials after listing off a series of largely disproven claims about election fraud. Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's slow down there a minute, my friends. Let me go back up to the paragraph, literally a couple sentences prior, that says unproven claims, but then in another paragraph, disproven claims. What's it going to be, the Hill? One or the other? How am I supposed to navigate this? I mean, honestly, I want to know the truth. Okay, if Kari Lake lost, she lost. I got no problem with it. I think ballot harvesting is the key. Now, I think Kari Lake has some good questions. I want to see them answered for. And just because you file a lawsuit doesn't mean your accusations are true. I want to see what the judge has to say about all of this. But I'm going to tell you right now, unproven and disproven are two completely different things. If they're unproven, well, then you've got a problem. But I want to say this too. What has the establishment done to prove their elections? I mean this honestly. I err on the side of the elections are probably fine, and I don't mean in every. Let me clarify that. I think they're really broken in a lot of ways. I think that ballot harvesting is horrifyingly nightmarish, but I know that it's legal in 39 states, and I know that even here people are complaining about how it's legal. There's I think they're saying you can take 9 ballots plus a family member, like yours plus 9 ballots. So people are ballot harvesting. That's a problem. But I don't think there's Chinese ballots being, flooded into the system. I do think that there are dirty politics afoot. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think the question is breaking the procedure. I think it's manipulating the procedure. Like that article from Time Magazine, the shadow campaign to save fortify the election. What they did on the surface, everything we know about, it's legal. Ballot harvesting, it's legal. They were changing the rules. You want to argue that violated legislative process? Well, then we're talking about a process violation outside the election. Yes, should be fixed. Let's read. I don't want to just keep going on about my opinions on the election. I want to give you the information so you can decide. AZ Family reports a judge is taking a motion to dismiss an election-related lawsuit filed by former GOP gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake under advisement following a hearing Monday morning in Maricopa County Superior Court. Lake filed the lawsuit earlier this month against current Secretary of State and Governor-elect Katie Hobbs, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, Recorder Stephen Richer, and Elections Director Scott Jarrett. The 70-page suit says evidence gathered from witnesses shows, quote, hundreds of thousands of illegal ballots infected the election in Maricopa County, and that problems with equipment along with long lines disenfranchised Republican voters. The lawsuit calls for Lake to be declared winner of the 2022 gubernatorial race, or at the very least to vacate the results and hold a new election. It's an interesting request, but I'll point this out. Illegal ballots does not mean fraud. The Lake team has explicitly said not fraud. That's important. What they're talking about is whether or not there was proper chain of custody and whether or not signature verification was done properly. I don't know how you answer these questions. I really don't. The judge may say you bring up some good points, but ultimately you can't prove any of this. And if you can't, now there's a bigger question. If you can prove there's no chain of custody for ballots, what would a judge say? Well, I know there's no chain of custody for hundreds of thousands of ballots, but I'm going to approve them anyway. I mean, that's Banana Republic stuff. And if he comes out, the only thing I think they could do is actually just prove there was chain of custody and the claim was wrong. But then what? Have a new election? That would also be very, very crazy, in my opinion. Now, they say the Secretary of State's office responded to the initial filing of the lawsuit, calling it baseless, saying Kari Lake needs attention like a fish needs water. Last week, Hobbs and the others named in the lawsuit filed a motion to dismiss, which is being taken up in Monday morning's hearing. And we have a very long Twitter thread for you from Tracy Beans. Excellent work, Tracy. She broke this down and going very quickly trying to. So some of it we'll have to parse through properly, but I want to make sure you understand what's happening. And I want to tell you why. This may be long-winded. It may be esoteric, but it's extremely important for the strength and for the health of our democracy. That's what they like to say, right? Our democracy. Well, we're a constitutional republic, and our constitutional republic needs protecting from those who want to know, who need to know, and are willing to know what's going on to defend the constitutional republic. Here we go. Tracy Beans with a live thread on what's happening in the motion to dismiss. Now, the judge, in the end, said, okay, I'm going to take this and then we'll go, you'll get my ruling soon. Tracy says it may be by the end of the day. She thinks maybe tomorrow. Here we go. Defendants claim the expedited nature of this suit is a problem. They say the court shouldn't entertain Kari Lake's claims. They're outside of bounds. To declare someone else a winner, the complainant must establish fraud or enough votes to change the outcome. Defense saying cavalier use of term fraud. She doesn't allege fraud in her lawsuit. Her response brief asserts a loophole. She doesn't need to prove fraud, just intentional conduct, unless a claim falls into fraud or a significant number of votes to change outcome if fails. So to put it simply, the Lake campaign is not saying fraud. They're saying that there was intentional conduct which resulted in problems in this election. Again, that's hard to prove. It is hard to prove intent. I hope you have some communications. If all it turns out to be is that machines broke, I don't tell you. Machines broke. I mean, it could suck. It could mean that this election doesn't reflect the will of the people, but it doesn't mean anyone did it on purpose, unless you can prove it. Tracy Bean says Lake asking court to draw inferences that there was a coordinated effort, a bet. Signature reviewers run back, and this was on election day because more Republicans vote that day, pointing out that everyone on the board in Maricopa County are Republicans, saying no documents or emails. It's hard to parse through, but the general idea here is she's alleging that there was a coordinated effort, that they did all of this, all these problems happen on election day intentionally because they knew Democrats were voting early. Calling Kari Lake claims absurd, generally, says she can't prove fraud, and her lawsuit doesn't have evidence of fraud. Now addressing actual election results must have small margin, 10, 20, 50 votes. She needs to overcome 17,000 votes. She points to two things to overcome. The court will sift through pages to find any evidence that anyone was turned away or votes were effective. Barrett's declaration flaws are many, and his sheer speculation isn't valid. At the end of the day, speculation about what might have been have no place in an election contest. Lake doesn't come close to meeting the right standards. Quote, if there is anything rotten, it is what this represents. Candidates can't accept the fact that they lost. Judicial system has served as a bulwark to stop this. Okay, good sir. And it currently is. Why not review evidence? Why motion to dismiss? Okay, I get it. Why not motion to dismiss? Anyone defending these claims would immediately make that move because it's a move to win. Now, look, the Lake campaign is going to come out, they did, and said, here's your chance to prove us wrong. But that's not a winning legal strategy, and I wouldn't expect anyone to take that. I wouldn't expect Kari Lake's team to take that. They're going to file a motion to dismiss. They go on to say, it's Liddy for Maricopa. A claim by the plaintiff, that's the Kari Lake campaign, that there are Republican voters that didn't get a chance to vote. That issue has already been presented to the Superior Court when RNC sued. Judge found no evidence that people couldn't vote. That was an election day ruling. Lake has been able to get affidavits. Nothing has changed. All of them but 2 voted. It's fascinating. Good point. When it came to these voting machines failing, of the people they claim were impacted by it, only 2 didn't vote. So where's anybody else? I still think because of the margin of failure, you need to then review those votes, verify the votes went to the right person and all that stuff. But that should be a no-brainer. I don't know. It's no issue, right? No issue? Yeah, well, apparently it is. Tracy Bean says a challenge to signature process should be brought before election, not after. Known, and she should have brought latches. If the court disagrees, the evidence brought to the court is evidence from 2020. That isn't true, she says. Okay, trying to break this one down. They're basically saying you should have sued earlier. You can't wait until after the fact and then sue. And it's Kari Lake tried to sue over the tabulators, and they said there's been no election, so you can't. Now that there's something that's happened, she's suing, and they're trying to argue it's too late, you can't sue. That to me is patently absurd. Here's the best part. In this part, we can see that Katie Hobbs' team is making an interesting claim. Katie Hobbs, Democrats' lawyers, claimed that 59% of the tabulators going down in historically red districts was not voter suppression, and that the term is reserved for the lynching and hanging of black people. They used past racial injustice as a shield for their crimes. Disgusting, says Kari Lake War Room. Well, I don't agree with that, just yet. I want to see adjudication, but that's the argument they made. An argument I find quite silly. Look, if you want to argue the machines going down is voter suppression, it is. If you want to argue it was intentionally done, I'm going to ask you to prove it. What I mean to say is voters were suppressed by the machines going down. Here's the challenge. They say, prove it, right? How many people who voted didn't have come out and said, hey, I wasn't able to vote? Only 2. Well, the problem is if someone wasn't able to vote or their vote wasn't counted or some error happened, how would they even know to come forward? That is a big problem. It doesn't mean Kari Lake can just walk through this one and be granted whatever she wants. The Republican Party was founded, blah, 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 suffragettes. Oh, heavens me. Hobbs in official capacity. The plaintiff has disclaimed any claim of fraud, did so in consolidated response. The burden on an election contestant to show outcome different is high and unsatisfied. This is about the stability of our election system. Let's go to Kari Lake and see what she has to say. Kari Lake's attorney. This case is not about ballot on demand printers not being certified, not the Fincham case. We aren't here to talk about printers. Largely, elections go off without a hitch. We normally don't have chaos, as Gates said. Now, this is interesting. This is not routine tech issues. By their own admission, they had 70 centers down. We found 2/3 of vote centers rejecting ballots. It isn't a case about flawed signature procedures. They created that out of whole cloth for latches, basically trying to say you're too late. But they're saying that's BS. That's not what we're talking about. It's also not just about breaking chain of custody rules. What the case is about is Maricopa and the Secretary of State ignoring detailed procedures, like testing ballots before election to determine tabulator function, about a systemic failure of tabulators, which are critical to processing votes, which occurred at 1/3 to 2/3 of centers, causing massive disruption on election day. Maricopa County employees coming forward to expose signature verifications. Thousands of examples of this, which we will talk about. It's about a massive chain of custody failure, not just now, but in Bromwich. Okay, here's an interesting claim. Chain of custody. Where did the ballots go? Where did they come from? You have no record? That's a problem. I mean, in order for the system to be secure, we need to say these ballots came from this place, traveled with this person to this center, and then were counted. If you don't know that, how are we supposed to trust these ballots? That's a problem for those who, that would disenfranchise the people who voted if they did not do this properly. Tracy Bean says, it's a criminal violation to not maintain chain of custody, not some minor thing. Now, if that's true, Kari Lake's got something big. If they did not maintain chain of custody, and that's criminal, let's see what the judge has to say. What defendants ignored in our complaint. On November 8th, if procedures followed, they should have had an exact count. On 11/10, 25,000 ballots appeared. Defendants have ignored and could have changed the outcome. Also, secret censorship portal for state and local officials to flag and take down posts, an affront to the First Amendment. My opinion on that is, yeah, it's bad, but I don't know how that's going to impact a case about ballots and chain of custody. The judge may say, yeah, you're probably right, influence campaigns happen, but who knows who was involved in that? We know that there were officials sending emails, for sure, violating the First Amendment, for sure. Being able to legally draw that connection into the election, I don't know how you do that. Being able to penalize someone or make a criminal referral or some kind of action because of suppression of speech, yeah, but that won't impact the election results. Like it may have, but I mean, like, I don't know how a judge can rule on that. So here we go. Whistleblowers who came forward. This is interesting. First, she says, these violations move votes, and we will enter evidence how this could shift an election. I'm not interested in that. I get it. I know it's a problem, but maybe moving an election is not a definitive number. You need a number. Plaintiffs say 17 million votes are insurmountable, but it's a tenth of a point of recount. The idea this is insurmountable doesn't add up. Whistleblowers who came forward, one said they were reviewing signatures. The math doesn't add up with this experience in ballot curing. As much as they want to say the standard is different in an election as opposed to another case, not true. Talking about chaos and intentionality, introduced Clay Parikh when retained for 8 years by testing lab that certified the machines for Maricopa and others. He is a top cyber expert. He knows rules and what is required. He swore about how Maricopa violated procedure. Very, very interesting claims from Kari Lake. Again, I am not saying these are true. It's one expert. I want to see a judge issue a ruling on this, which we may see soon. Defendants don't challenge his qualifications. It's a point in motion to dismiss. They do challenge Barris, recognized pollster. We put forward a 10-page analysis based on history and questions he asked during exit polls. What did they experience in terms of chaos? Survey data is appropriate in litigation. His findings of between 15K and 25K is something based in science and for purposes of motion to dismiss should accept as true and is outcome determinative. Basically, there's enough here to show the election could have been swung. I don't want to just sit here and go through all of the nitty gritty of the entire trial. I want you to understand just a few very important points. They say this. Maricopa whispers, should we object? There were 3 who submitted signed declarations. 24 people were reviewing signatures. At level 2, there were at most 3 managers. After level 1 looked at signature, they would take rejected and review. 30 to 40% were rejected at 1. That is massive. 30 to 40%? At the other center, the same 34 to 40% rejected. At Curing Center, testimony was, quote, always told they would be in for heck because they were processing 60K a day and rejecting 12 to 15,000. He was told next day would be bad because they would come back. Next day and only 1/10 would come back. Math tells us that 10,800 ballots approved by level 2 managers. That's 3,600 ballots per manager in a day. 2 managers have additional signatures to match and tools. If you assume they spent 1 minute reviewing each, that would be 3,600 minutes. That would be 60 hours within 24 hours. That's 25 seconds a ballot. The math does not add up. Tens of thousands of ballots pushed in that shouldn't have been counted. This is shown by examples we gave. That is compelling. We put forward 5,000 ballots, extrapolated it's 130,000 ballots. Again, not saying any of it's true. It's the argument being made. I'm curious to see how the judge determines this. Now, I think in terms of chain of custody, it was something in the field of like 200 and some odd thousand ballots. That would be interesting. But I want to come down because it's a very, very long thread. And I want to talk about important issues surrounding this. So let's see if we can get the final statement from the judges here. They say, let's see. The defense says honest mistakes absent allegations of fraud are not enough to sustain this challenge. Counsel provided no response about legal standard for contest. Alleged fraud, speculative allegations don't meet the bar. Parikh now. Counsel suggested we didn't challenge his qualifications. We didn't have enough pages, but let's assume his conclusions are true. They're literally discounting their own level 1 employees. So the defense is basically saying these people doing signature verification, no, they don't know what they're doing. The attorney is downplaying how many votes were being rejected by the tabulators. They're also looking for sanctions against Kari Lake for filing the lawsuit. Now, I got to say right there, are you nuts? If this is part of the process. We need confidence. If Kari Lake is wrong, then prove it. Filing a sanction is trying to scare people. Don't you dare ever ask questions. Elections should be questioned. And then when it's proven right or wrong, whatever, we the people. Tracy Bean says, that's it. The judge ended in an interesting way, saying, all right, I will take this under advisement and render my decision as quickly as possible. I understand the time constraints. It could mean two things. He knows they will appeal if dismissed, or he isn't dismissing. I want to say, I think there's some compelling arguments. I don't think it's very strong for Kari Lake. I'm not saying it's very weak either. I'm not saying I look at this and go, whoa, slam dunk. I say, I'm seeing this and, okay, we should look at the evidence that they're presenting. I think that's a fair shake. I don't know how this will end up. But I think it's not just about the arguments made by Kari Lake. I think it's also about maintaining confidence among the people. We are in trying times. Things are really, really bad. Okay? People are fighting. There's violence. People are threatening my life. I think we need to have a calm, reasoned approach to this. We're not getting it. We're getting procedural battles. We're getting ballot harvesting. We're getting motions for dismissal. I get it. It's about winning. And ain't nobody going to back down. And ain't nobody going to open themselves up to a weakness for good nature or whatever. I think what we need is for Katie Hobbs to say, I want to give Kari Lake anything and everything to prove to her that she lost. That would be the appropriate outcome. No one would ever do that. Personally, I want to see what Kari Lake has to show us in an evidentiary hearing. I want to see her team sample these ballots and test them. I want to see if the numbers about signatures match up. And then if the reality is, and I got to be honest, I'll tell you what the reality is, I think. I think Kari Lake's probably not wrong about some of this stuff, but I think it's all just ballot harvesting. How is it that Lauren Boebert nearly lost? Ballot harvesting. They know it. This is what bothered me so much about 2020. This inability to understand that Biden got the votes. And people are saying, no, it was fraud. It was fraud. Look, when they, in a year in advance, legalize universal mail-in voting, and then in 39 states where it's overtly legal to ballot harvest, they do. And then you say, how did he get the votes? Because they knocked on the door and said, you know who Biden is? No. Fill it out anyway. Whatever. Free vote. It's that simple. And there's evidence, my friends. That's why I beg people, please. Kari Lake may lose this one. You may be upset. Again, I'm a fan. I think she's fantastic. She's not perfect. I got some criticisms of her. But she's one of the best. When we have her on the show, she's like, ask anything. Talk about whatever you want. There's no BS politicking of these are off limits, that's off limits. She sits down, she's like, what's up? And I'm like, I like it. She is really, really good at being a politician. Now, she's not really a politician in the traditional sense, but this is why I want to see her win. And she may not. She may not win for one simple reason. Ballot harvesting is powerful and Republicans didn't see it. One thing we can say definitively from this lawsuit is that Republicans know and Democrats know Republicans vote on the day of and Democrats vote by mail. Now, why is it that Democrats vote by mail? Is it because deep down in their heart of hearts, they're like, well, I just think voting by mail is the right thing to do? No, it's because it's ballot harvesting, and it's been ballot harvesting. That's why in 2018, 2020, they're like, well, mail-in votes always favor Democrats. Yes, because they're going door to door and saying, please fill this out, please vote. With COVID, it was tremendously expanded. Now, you could request an absentee ballot and people would. But after COVID, They normalized it. And now, in many states, if you requested it one time, they just send it out every time. Democrats need only knock on a door and say, did you fill the vote out? And they go, no, it's right there, fill it out. And you know what? If 9 out of 10 say no, that's still one more that Republicans ain't going to get. So yes, we all know this. Just the news. Top Maricopa election offices couldn't reconcile 15,000 disparity in outstanding votes, internal email. Quote, unable to currently reconcile Secretary of State listing with our estimates from yesterday. Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer wrote in a November 10th email. Okay. Maybe this was ultimately reconciled. Maybe this communication is out of date. It must be answered for. Otherwise, there's no confidence in the system and everybody's going to lose their mind. So, as I stated in 2020, we need this. We need a judge to hammer it out, to lay it down and go through everything. We need a judge. We need the judge right now to say we're going to go to evidence for the sake of confidence in this country, in our state, of our people. We will hear what Kari Lake has to say. You know what? Maybe he calls her bluff. Or maybe there's actually something there. Either way, I think the strongest position, and I said this to Kari Lake, I don't like the fraud narrative at all. For two reasons. I think it's less likely. I think ballot harvesting is it. And the second, it's off-putting and confusing. Now, maybe it's right. I don't know. I lean towards it's not. But you go to a regular person and say, the only reason I lost is because they cheated. And people are going to be like, oh, get out of here, man. Can't you just accept you lost? But if you go to the average person and say, did you hear about how the machines were backed up and people were having trouble voting? Look, I got a problem with that. And I think we should have an evidentiary hearing on what happened. Then people are going to be like, well, that's a good point. A fair person. We may never win over cult members. They're going to be like, no, dismiss. You get away. I want to win. But there are many people who are, maybe if it's just in the middle, a little bit, that little bit you need to win over, who are going to say, okay, fine. I agree. I think you lost, but prove it. I want to call your bluff. That's the opportunity right there. I see a lot of people who want to go out and just yell fraud. And I'm like, guys, I talk to a lot of regular people. And if you say they cheated, they laugh. They go, oh, this is ridiculous. But if you say something like, well, there's questions about chain of custody. I mean, you think that's wrong, right? Like if we don't know where the ballots came from, you'll hear from a lot of people. I do. They say things like, yeah, but that doesn't mean they're fraudulent. I'm like, you're right. Maybe if it's a crime, though, we should investigate. Well, yeah. I'm like, you wouldn't want someone else doing that. I mean, if they come out right now and it was legit and there was a chain of custody issue, what if Trump? What if Trump then does it? That's right. I don't mean it like literally like that, but I've talked to people and I've said outright, like, look, man, I don't know what happened, but let's just prove them wrong. Unsurprisingly, many leftists don't want to even try. You wonder why. I'm neutral. My attitude is have the hearing, prove it. Let's not just keep shoving everything under the rug. When someone comes out and says, I object, I say, okay, why? So we'll see what happens. Look, there's a lot of stories right now. And I kept looking at this one. And there's the FBI, there's the Twitter files that are dropping right now. And I'm like, this Kari Lake thing is very important. If her claims turn out to be true, it's an opportunity to actually adjudicate this stuff, to pull up the evidence and figure out what's going on and maybe repair some confidence. Maybe most people don't care about it as much as I do, but I do. So I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up 8 p.m. tonight on stage at Turning Point USA. I hope we can pull this off. So you don't want to miss it. Not 8 p.m. It's going to be 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. I think we're planning to do it early. It may go late. Hopefully not. But I think it'll be fun. So thanks for hanging out and smash the like button. We'll see you all tonight. Should be fun.